You are now listening to the Add 10 Gallons Concrete Podcast.
Wait, the answer was add 10 gallons?
Add 10 gallons.
My first thought was we got to put Acti-Gel in there.
Yeah, great.
Truck's on the way. On the way.
Yeah, okay. I've got two observations, neither of which are really educated or well thought out. Which are like most of my observations are.
There aren't a lot of problems on a job site that can't be solved with a sack full of biscuits.
Today's episode of the Add 10 Gallons Concrete Podcast is brought to you by Acti-Gel 208. Acti-Gel 208 is a high-performance additive for the concrete industry that is greatly beneficial to the producer. It enables them to increase the percentage of manufactured sand by up to 100% and completely replace all the natural sand in the mix. In areas where natural sand is scarce, inconsistent, and expensive, this provides a huge benefit to any ready-mix company out there. Benefits of manufactured sand and concrete include consistent air content, improved compaction, and increased density. Now, in the past, the downside of using manufactured sands was that they were hard to pump, hard to place, and hard to finish. Well, Acti-Gel 208 solves all those issues. By improving suspension, stability, and the quality of the cement paste in the mix, Acti-Gel overcomes the old issues with manufactured sand and leaves them behind. Let Acti-Gel 208 improve the quality of your mix while saving money on every yard you produce. For more information, visit us at actigel.com. That's ACTI-GEL.com.
Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to the Add 10 Gallons Concrete Podcast. Thanks for being with us. This is episode 11, and we appreciate you being here. Let's check in with the guys. Paul, how's it going?
It's going good, brother.
Good, man. Joey, what's up?
Oh, not a whole lot. Doing all right.
All right. We got some new audio equipment, software, I should say. So hopefully that makes my life as an editor a little bit easier. We're not using free software anymore. I'm actually paying money to hopefully improve the audio quality. So we'll work through that, and hopefully that makes the show a little bit better, and we can continue making the show better for the listeners. But after all, this is a concrete show about concrete. You want to talk about concrete?
Let's talk about some concrete. What do you got?
Actually, I was going to talk about something. It might have been the last episode, but basically we said, sometimes we think of concrete as being more complicated than it needs to be, but at the end of the day, it seemingly so, you can put just about anything in concrete and make it work. So I know Joey wants to talk about ash and the availability and the use of fly ash, and I want to talk about using ground glass, as an actual pozzolon, and a company that's doing so relatively successfully, albeit on a small scale, up in Connecticut, of all states. So that's going to go hand in hand. Joey, what do you know about fly ash?
I just know it's a byproduct of the coal industry.
Yes, sir. And, I mean, they're still making ash.
Yeah, they're making it. So the issue with the fly ash is it only comes from the coal-fired power plants.
Right.
And as those power plants get refurbished and retrofitted, or if new ones are getting built, they're all being done with natural gas. Natural gas isn't going to give you any of that ash. So with the environmental concerns, people are switching to gas. Another reason they're switching to gas is because how those plants operate. So if you're running on a furnace that's burning coal in order to power it, you generally can't turn it off. And if you do, it's very difficult to get it back started.
Right.
Where when you switch to natural gas, you just flip a switch on and off, and you've got heat burning exactly where at the temperature you want it to burn and where you want it to burn. It's a lot easier to use. So as people start to switch, the fly ash that's being generated is supposedly less available. And Joey's article sort of hints that just because there aren't as many coal-fired power plants doesn't mean the availability of fly ash is as low as people in the concrete industry think it is.
Right.
So, Joey, what are those numbers looking like?
So actually, it says over half of the coal ash produced last year, 2019, was recycled, and that makes the fifth consecutive year that more than half of the power generating station byproducts in the U.S. was used rather than just thrown away. The volume of fly ash used in concrete, which was 12.6 million tons, was a 1% increase over 2018. Fly ash production, fly ash use and other, cementitious production has still dropped like 22%. So people are still, using less and less of it, but just fly ash and concrete was up 1%. I don't know that it's a telltale sign that either that fly ash is, fly ash use is increasing. Maybe it was just a one-off thing because overall fly ash, consumption is down.
Well, the overall ready-mix market in 2019 was up like 4 or 5%, I think.
So, it was, yeah.
Yeah, so for fly ash to go up just 1% means it's not really tracking with the rest of the industry.
Right, and that's where I wanted to interject something that I had just learned recently, and maybe offer a theory that people are still using secondary materials, but maybe they're trying to get away from fly ash because they can see the writing on the wall. Maybe.
Well, everybody's been seeing this writing on the wall for like 10 years. For 10 years, it's, where are we going to get our ash? Where are we going to get our ash? We got to find something else. And then every year, like, magically, there's more ash.
Right.
Yeah. So, but it's so cheap. So cheap. People are going to do what they got to do to find it. Mm-hmm. So you'd love to pay $40 a ton forever, but those prices are starting to come up a little bit. And what I know some people are doing is these resource companies have it landfilled. Like Joey was talking, a bunch of it's being thrown away. Well, some of that stuff that's been thrown away can still be taken out, reclassified, and sold. And so, yeah, the cost goes up from $40 a ton to $60 a ton, but still, that's still half the price. Yeah, at least more, or less than half the price or whatever. But anyway, so people are doing what they got to do to get that out and get it into their concrete. I'd love to see for other SCMs to come out and make a run, and that's what you're sort of looking at there, right?
Ground glass.
Ground glass. All right, talk to me. I don't know anything about ground glass.
Ground glass is not something that I would have said or had the epiphany. It was like, oh, why didn't I think of that? You know what I mean? But apparently, it can be used as a pozzolan. And the product name that I want to talk about is Positive. Pozzotive. Positive.
Cute name.
By Urban Mining. Urban Mining is the company, and they have a plant in Beacon Falls, Connecticut, where they claim they can create an annual output of about 50,000 tons of ground glass.
Okay.
And what makes this particular company, this particular process unique is that they can claim they can recycle any size, shape, color, cleanliness, etc., and come out and make something that is an optimal particle size that is also consistent. Apparently, the particle size and the consistency of that particle size is where the importance lies in making ground glass pozzolan that is effective.
Well, yeah, that's going to be all pozzolans. We see that in our kaolin and Attapulgite business. You got to be consistent with your particle sizes. Cement's going to be the same way. They're measuring the blane. Blanes really needs to fall in a certain range, be consistent from batch to batch. Yeah. But the big reason for the particle size being consistent is because the available surface area there really depicts reactivity. And so if you have a higher surface area, it's typically going to be more reactive. So you want to stay consistent so that people can have predictable concretes. That 50,000 ton, is that just because of the plant they have in Connecticut, and so they're just going to service like New York City?
Yeah. I'm not so sure if they're servicing New York City specifically or not. So far, they claim that they've serviced or they've used this Positive product in 10 million CMUs, which is a decent amount of block. Yeah. 750,000 square foot of pavers and 500,000 square foot of pre-stressed plank.
Well, if it's going into block, then it's probably very economical sales point. Those guys they don't mess around.
They're not going to pay a whole lot for anything.
Nope.
They probably don't pay a whole lot for their coffee in the morning.
Did they mention a reason why they put it in block and all that stuff first?
They didn't. It was a very short article. And admittedly, I didn't dive real deep into Urban Mining and their whole process. I know that they claim that they're not the first people to use ground glass, but the process that they use to gain those uniformly shaped and sized particles, that process itself is actually what they have the patent on. Not the product, of course, but whatever process they use is apparently the golden ticket there. And they claim they can replace up to 50% of Portland.
Yeah,
It's a lot.
I was going to ask you how much they were replacing those blocks.
Yeah.
Cause
Well, they said up to 50%. Also, they didn't claim any work in the ready mix industry. I mean,
Yeah.
they're working with.
well, I mean, if they're block, they're all pan mixer or ribbon mixers
Oh,
usually in those block plants. But the interesting thing is going to be if they can sell this to cement manufacturers, blend it right into the cement itself.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way you need to go with this stuff. Don't be like the fly ash where you've got to have separate silos. Let's get this joker blended right into the cement. Let's roll.
Yeah. Well, and another thing, too, because they have the patented process, and really, I think what they want to sell is the process. And
Yeah, they want to license that out.
Right.
Yeah.
License that out and put it. I mean, if you can make a plant with a 50,000 ton annual output, you just put those plants around metropolitan areas and just kind of grow that in a franchise type of way.
Well, this is kind of in line with what we're seeing, where as companies are trying to make these like LC2 and LC3 cements. I mean, we're seeing it. The Portland limestone cement. This would just be another variation of that. So to be able to license it to one of these big cement manufacturers and just have them incorporate it, that way you don't have to have any kind of franchise. So instead of licensing out a new manufacturing facility, you would just license this to an existing facility that can grind the glass and add in a particle separator or whatever kind of magnet or whatever they're using to pull the impurities out of this glass process.
Right. Well, yeah. So I mean, everyone. I guess in closing, there, everyone's trying to make a concrete that's just as efficient, but you're trying to cut costs where you can, and really trying to cut the Portland where you can. I would imagine from CO2 emissions, and also, I mean, the price of Portland isn't going down anytime soon. So.
Yeah, right.
So, I mean, what do you think? Do you think there's a magical fix-all out there, or do you think we're going to continue to see options and people messing with things like ground glass and whatever else might come down the pipe? Do you think this is just going to be a continuous thing?
Yeah, it's going to be continuous because of legislation. That's the reason. It's not really because we people in the concrete industry really are beholden to thinking that we're emitting so much carbon that the planet's going to die.
Right.
Until all the countries actually work together, then I'm not really sure how much all this effort it really does on a global basis, because there are some major polluters that account for 80% of the cement pollution that really aren't doing their part. So look, I'm all for things being better and making the air cleaner, but unless everybody's pulling together, us here in the United States, Canada, and Europe, like us being the only ones that do it, aren't even going to account for 10% of the global problem.
100%. And hey, backdoor segue to what you want to talk about. Talk about the issue of most world problems. Let's talk about something that pertains to COVID-19.
Wow, that is a heck of a segue.
Yeah, we talk about we could do everything to fix our issues, but 80% of the pollution is coming from looking at you, China.
They call them out, but things are going to get better in the United States, Canada, and the European countries. We are going to do our part. We already are, especially in the United States. Did a really good job when the Paris Climate Accord came into effect. We outpaced everybody.
We're the other one holding up our end of the bargain.
We hit all of our benchmarks. We surpassed our benchmarks. Everybody else went the wrong direction. So it was like, or if not the wrong direction, barely cut anything. So we're the only ones that did that, and the United States will continue to do that. And cutting cement production is probably going to be, part of that effort. So it's interesting to me to see the cement companies realize that's where it's headed. The governments are going to start legislating it that way. The structural engineers are on board supposedly with net zero building goals by 2050. Yeah. So when you see that stuff start to happen, you got to say, who's this going to impact? It's going to impact the cement companies. So they want to get ahead of this. They want to be the ones that are now driving the change. So that they're able to continue to stay in business and make their healthy profits and keep their shareholders happy. But yeah, so speaking of what I wanted to talk about specifically, a real shortage, something that's going to impact the ready mix guys pretty hardcore
next year.
2021. Thank you, COVID. Here we go. We are about to see a price increase of about 40 to 75% on a compound, sodium thiocyanate. And where that word means absolutely nothing to most of us, what you will know is the term set accelerator. And that is one of the primary compounds in a lot of set accelerators. It's also found in mid-range water reducers too. But the issue is that same compound is used in almost all the COVID-19 test kits. And so because of that, the supply of sodium thiocyanate is like completely gone. Yeah. So they're working really hard to make more over there. It's overseas, so it's coming from Asia. They're trying to make more of it as fast as they can, but even then, it's a huge delay. And so on top of that, you got freight issues. So if you're not involved with shipping stuff internationally like our company is, I'll go ahead and tell you, there's problems. Because COVID-19 just disrupted everything, and all of a sudden, all these businesses were shut down, factories were shut down, everything's shut down, so cargo's not moving at near the rate that it was. And so you've got ships that are blank sailing. They got nothing on them, and that is no bueno for these shipping companies. So huge delays. They start not sending as many ships out. Now that things are kind of ramping back up in some economies, we need more ships. But the freight guys got hit these shipping guys got hit so hard that they're really having to ease back into it, and it's causing a lot of delays. So you've got logistical concerns, supply concerns, and production concerns of this sodium thiocyanate. It's going to cause real problems for ready-mix guys trying to get their hands on accelerators.
Yep, so got that to look forward to.
Or what you could do, shameless plug, is use Acti-Gel, and you can reduce your accelerator use by up to 50%. Ding.
Yep. Man, a shameless plug is true, man.
It's our podcast. We can say that if we want to.
Absolutely. Thank you, Acti-Gel 208, for being the presenting sponsor of the Add 10 Gallons Concrete podcast. Also, everyone needs to go to the website, actigel.com, ACTI-GEL.com, and learn how you can save money moving forward.
And we got a new website coming out, hopefully first of the year. So be on the lookout for that too.
I'm looking forward to that. Much needed, much welcome.
Yep. And so Joey Bell, all your shotcrete friends, make sure they know accelerator prices are going up. Acti-Gel can help them alleviate some of those cost concerns.
You gotta be interested to know if they know that, or if that's something that they haven't heard about yet. We got some shotcrete guys coming on down the line that are going to be guests. They'll probably be interested to hear that.
Right on. And speaking of spreading the word to the masses, is there an upcoming ASA meeting, or is that kind of on the shelf for a while?
They have one in the spring for that happens during the ACI convention. They used to have one during World of Concrete as well, but as we know, World of Concrete got postponed. I haven't heard about the ACI spring meeting yet. It's usually into March or so there's no telling. I mean, it could go either way at this point, I think.
Yeah. Or you could have it in Florida. They ain't got new rules. Hey, speaking of Florida, our guest for today's episode is Jenna Taylor. Jenna is a construction director for HCA Healthcare, and she primarily works in the state of Florida. I mean, HCA is a huge company, and they do great things, mostly down south. She did mention that Texas and Florida are the two bigger states that they work in. But because she has the privilege of working in Florida, she had a lot of cool stories. And so I'm really excited for the listeners to get to that portion of the podcast where we get to talk with Jenna about her crazy stories from the state of Florida and people running through job sites and all kinds of crazy stuff. So that was a lot of fun.
Clothing optional.
Yeah, clothing optional. But it is safe for work still. We keep this PG-13 around here. It's a kid's show. But, yeah, super excited to get into this episode with Jenna. Very smart.
Yep.
And really sheds a light on the healthcare business and the construction of hospitals. And, I mean, what better time to talk about those kind of things than now? She gets into how, COVID-19 affected her and her business, and a little bit of what we can look forward to in the near future. So Without further ado, this is Jenna Taylor, episode 11. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome in to episode 11 here. We got Jenna Taylor with us. Jenna, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're excited to have you on. To get us started, first explain what it is you do and how you got there.
I am a construction director with HCA. We manage 180 plus acute care hospitals across the United States, and my divisions are predominantly Florida. So we have 4 divisions in Florida, and so I manage all of the construction projects for that state.
Oh, wow. Okay. So how long have you been in that particular position?
I've been a director for a couple years, and prior to that, I was a construction manager. And then prior to that, I was actually on the general contractor side building hospitals, and one of our clients was HCA.
Oh, okay. Okay. So you got the job you have currently through referrals, I'm assuming.
Yes.
Kind of working your way up the job site, as they say.
Once they have you in the hook, they want to keep you on, right? It's difficult to build an acute care facility, so they want to keep the knowledge family.
And you touched on something right away that I wanted to get into, so what better time than now? The challenges and the nuances that go along with building healthcare facilities. Kind of start on the low-hanging fruit. I mean, what is a typical challenge that you have to face that you typically wouldn't have to face on a regular job site?
I haven't really built anything else, so it is my normal, but many of the challenges we're building around occupied space. So the sensitive nature of the staff and the patient safety, everything that's going on. I mean, many times we're building right next to a NICU. We're building above an OR. We're doing vertical expansions and horizontal expansions. So just the nature of the space that we're operating is pretty important. The user groups, I mean, so we're not only dealing with the actual physicians and the staff, but also all of the different infrastructure. So you've got all of the equipment, medical equipment, your CT scans, the nurse call, all of those, the imaging equipment, all of that stuff has to be coordinated, for final inspections and before we can start occupying and seeing patients. So. And then there's all the AHJs. We have ACA in Florida, OSHPD in California, just local building inspectors, and much more heavy oversight in the healthcare world.
I guess piggybacking on that answer, that great answer. What would you think would be more difficult in your eyes, starting from ground up or adding on to a current healthcare facility? What actually provides more of a challenge for what you need to do?
Ground up is easy. We love those projects. You're not working around, existing, space. You're not having to add on to systems. I mean, our hospitals, we have hospitals that were built in the 40s and 50s. And so when you start expanding fire alarm systems and expanding, vertical expansion of elevator shafts and stuff like that, it gets very complicated. So we love our greenfield projects. And quite frankly, it's only a handful of greenfield projects. Mostly what we're doing is renovation, horizontal and vertical expansions.
Jenna, in preparation for this episode, I sent you a question about flooring and vibration and delicate equipment that can sometimes be found within hospitals and labs or whatever you're building around. How do you work around that, and how do you remedy those potential problems?
So usually we don't do learning facilities. So usually most of our sensitive equipment is going to be on the ground floor. So when you're dealing with that type of slab, we have less vibration issues. We do have to stiffen the structure many times if we're building, ORs and imaging equipment on the second floor. But typically we don't do anything past the second floor. So the structural engineers should know that stuff on the front end. But yeah, we do get some crazy requests from users to, put an OR on a 7th floor, and we have to tell them that that's just not an option, right? With a steel structure, it does move, and so we can't put a CT scan on the 7th floor or put a robotics OR right on a 5th floor because you're going to feel that motion of the building.
Wow, I never would have thought that just the motion of the building itself would have that much effect on some of that equipment. It's pretty unbelievable to me.
Right. Well, I mean, the tolerance is low, but if the structural engineer knows that going in, then they're going to have the structure stiffened enough. It's when you go in after the fact and you're renovating or remodeling and trying to put something in a space that was not meant for it. But like I said, typically our sensitive areas are not on elevated decks.
Do they still build these huge tall buildings to quote unquote sway with the wind, like when you're dealing in cities or areas with high winds or any kind of weird weather patterns? How do you adapt your building to withstand all that?
I would be lying if I said I knew. We typically don't. We don't really go above 7 stories, and
Okay.
so we're really in high rise is typically 3 to 4, depending on the city. So we are in high rise areas, but we aren't doing true high rise buildings.
They just built a brand new hospital up here where I live. I live in York, Pennsylvania. UPMC Medical Center just built a brand new hospital last year. Um, it didn't take them very long. It was a greenfield project. They moved Memorial Hospital. It was an old hospital downtown York. They moved it out into the country. It's just an absolutely beautiful project. But it didn't seem like it took them that long. And I'm curious, when you have a greenfield project, how long does that usually take? What's the process for you? How long does it take? And where does concrete? Where do you come in that project and lend your expertise?
Okay, so in my world, we are involved from conceptual, from the concept of the hospital, right? Conceptual design, we actually put a budget to it. So if you think about the entire lifespan of the project, from design, permitting to construction, it's well over 2 years. But what you're actually seeing, obviously, in the field construction, once we break ground for a greenfield, we're looking at 12 months. It depends on how complicated the site is. You can do the structure and the building in 11 months. You got the site, and then you also got commissioning and turnover of building systems. But yes, you're looking at a 12-month construction process. And once again, when it gets into the tech expertise of the hospital, we really rely on our structural engineers, our contractors, and our subcontractors. So we are in trouble. If they're calling me in to look at a slab, like we're up a creek.
What's the percentage, or what's the likelihood of that happening when you get called in?
Well, never. Not for technical stuff, but I do get all the problems. So we have incidents on our projects. So right now I have probably close to 50 active projects going on in different phases of construction and design. And so it comes to me when there's a problem. So nobody ever calls me and is like, Jenna, this really great thing is happening. We need you to come in.
That sounds like our job. Like nobody ever calls us when things are going right, and there's like rainbows and butterflies everywhere. They call us when crap has hit the fan,
That's right.
something's broken, concrete's messed up. But we always say too that they pay us for when things go wrong and not when things are going right. When things go wrong, that's when we earn our paycheck.
That's right. I mean, if a contractor could go out and read a set of plans and build everything perfectly per plans and specs, then they wouldn't need me. We would just hire a contractor to go do it.
And the industry wouldn't be near as interesting as it is.
We get cussed out a lot less, but it actually is so rare that anybody in our company, it's not just the concrete side, but that anybody gets any kind of compliments that we actually post it on our internal message boards. Like, hey, this customer said we did great. Everybody should should hear this.
Right. Yeah, you do have to promote that when you have an opportunity. And even on the last episode when we were talking to Natalie Martin, she's a rep and a technical advisor for a chemical company, Crescent Chemical, and we got into a story about how she was taking her licks on the job site, and we kind of made the comment, well, everyone gets yelled at, it's a rite of passage. And that kind of leads us into a famous question we like to ask a lot. I mean, do you have one story that kind of sticks in your mind, the craziest thing you've you've seen on a job site, one of those memories that'll never leave you?
It's really people, whether it's the construction workers or like a behavioral health patient getting loose and maybe running naked, through the job site. Something like that is what we might be dealing with in my current position.
That's what the people want to hear, Jenna. Can you
Yeah.
Yes.
We've also had a meth head that ran through a temporary wall right into our construction entrance. We've had peeping toms in our construction bathrooms. I mean, we've had very interesting things. They always talk about in Florida, like meanwhile in Florida,
Florida
it's
man?
all true. It is all true. I used to work out west, and things didn't happen out west like they do in Florida.
This is awesome.
Something in the water.
It might be. Now, can you, without throwing anybody under the bus per se, can you elaborate on areas of Florida or regions of Florida that might be worse than others as it pertains to Florida Man headlines?
Central Florida for sure, and the Panhandle. But
I knew you were gonna say that.
most of the crazy stuff happens in Central Florida. Panhandle is a little backwoods, but Central Florida, Ocala, it's bad.
That's what I would have guessed too. So it's nice to know that the stereotype holds up.
God.
I would love to see the video of the meth head running through the wall.
We've had somebody bit. Also, I mean, like I said, meanwhile in Florida, nothing surprises me anymore. I kind of get a giggle now as long as we find out that a patient is not hurt and a staff is not in danger, then we have to laugh a little bit about some of the things that happens on the job site.
Oh my goodness.
Oh my God, that's crazy. You're saying that you've got 50 active projects in different phases. We manage business development, which is essentially what you're managing is literally development of buildings, and we manage development of accounts. And that's like what we have is like about 60 active developments in different phases, and that seems like a lot for us to keep track of. How do you keep track of so many projects that you're responsible for?
It's so hard. I have a great team. So I have 5 guys that report to me, and so they are the front line defense. So those are the construction managers they're managing it day to day. And then I just get brought in when everybody needs help, right? And any type of contracts and big change orders obviously come to me for approval, but like I really rely on my guys to help with that because it's impossible to keep up with 40 to 50 projects at any given time.
That's pretty crazy. And what else, or who else, or how many other people comprise your team? If there's 5 construction managers, average 10 jobs apiece, I'm sure they're managing some other people as well. What's the size of your entire team?
So we have 3 directors and 12 or 13 construction managers. So we're managing easily over 100 projects, usually over 120 projects at a given time. And then we also have freestanding ERs and ambulatory surgery centers and all of that other stuff that's happening as well. But we really just count acute care projects. And acute care projects could be anything from a $3 million renovation all the way to a $250 million greenfield project.
One of the only times I've ever got a chance to work with HCA or being involved in a project with them was trying to help them with the floors especially on the elevated slabs, where they were trying to reduce the relative humidity of the surface of the concrete because a few years ago, I guess maybe it was a decade ago, when the tile for the floors of these hospitals, the adhesive went from being petroleum-based to being water-based adhesive to reduce the VOCs. And when they did that, they learned very quickly that the relative humidity on the surface of the concrete slab is still like 97, 98% after like 7 days. And if you try to put that flooring down, it's all going to curl back up and peel off and be useless, and you have to go back and do it all over again. So in an effort to speed up the building process, they've tried to develop low humidity concrete slabs, really talking about the surface there, so they can get these flooring tiles down very, very quickly. Our product didn't really work for that. We sell some other products that did, but is that a challenge that you deal with, Jenna, as you go through the construction phase, and how do you manage that?
Yes. We do set aside allowances and just understanding that if it is above a 90, we're going to have to do something to do some moisture mitigation. When it comes to the adhesives, we really try to reduce the finger pointing by going with the flooring. We use all Mannington. We're a sole source with Mannington flooring right now. So we go with those adhesives. That way there's no finger pointing on, it was installation or it was adhesives or it was the flooring's fault. But yes, we have moisture issues many times. We use Concure and Ardex and Bead Blast, epoxy, you name it. We spare no expenses in making sure that we can save our schedule by quick install, but also so that we do not have to come back in after that space is occupied and rework the flooring, because time is money once we're starting to see patients.
Well, as I understand it, you can correct me if I'm wrong, because I am by no means an expert in this, but as I understand it, that's one of the most critical things, right? The moisture, the relative humidity of the surface of these slabs, just a huge delay. And you laid out 3 potential solutions, whether they're separate or used together. But could you answer, is that really one of the most critical factors in the concrete side of this construction? And then those mitigation efforts, could you go into some detail on that? We'd love to learn more about it.
Yeah, so yes, moisture is obviously an issue. So go into detail in which side. So
you said so Ardex is one option for mitigation. The Concure is an option for mitigation, and potentially epoxy. Could you tell us a little bit more about those things?
Yeah, I mean, so we typically go with the Concure system. So if we get the relative humidity back and it's above 90, we have a per square foot cost that we negotiate with most of our subcontractors on the front end. And so then we can basically say, okay, well, what's our square footage of that? And we know exactly what that's going to cost to go in and do moisture mitigation for that area. So in most of our climates, we're assuming that we're going to have to do moisture mitigation. And so we also have a floor flatness issue too. So floor levelness and floor flatness is also, so we are sometimes going in and grinding floors and then bead blasting and then literally sealing in the moisture, right? With the Concure system is essentially what it does. And so you're sealing in the moisture so that then once we lay the adhesive and the flooring sticks and the moisture stays in the slab and doesn't obviously come into the flooring.
Yeah, I remember seeing the specs one time for one of these hospital floors, and I believe it was where an MRI was going to be, and the tolerance from one end to the other was so incredibly tight. And they were like, oh, we got to bring in this California laser screed, and we got to get it to just millimeters. I mean, just across the entire span, it was of a millimeter, something crazy. And then the floor had to be incredibly dense. So I was interested to know, are you dealing with several different types of concrete mixes when you're going to build these rooms for MRIs or X-rays or operating rooms? It seems like you could run across a lot of different mix designs. Are you involved with that at all?
So we don't do a lot. So no, not for the slabs. When it comes to some of the rooms, we do more than imaging. So we also have to, floor flatness and floor levelness is important for trip hazards too throughout the whole hospital. But when it comes to the special systems within those imaging rooms, a lot of those are like a self-leveling epoxy mix, right? A special flooring system that come in after the fact. Typically, no, we're not doing a bunch of different, mixed designs, right, for the slabs. So we're coming in over the top and dealing with issues once once our concrete is finished.
Gotcha. So that's a separate third-party contractor that's coming in after the ready-mix guy's already poured his slab. That's had time to cure, and then guys come in after the fact with their little hoses and put little grout mixers and make up those self-leveling floor compounds. Yeah,
That's right.
Good. In the construction of these hospitals, when you're doing the add-ons and the renovations, does like the hospital decide like, hey, we want to expand, let's call HCA, and then HCA calls the architects and engineers and everybody and the structural engineer and everybody that needs to be involved in the project? Do they call you and then you're a one-stop shop to help them develop a plan to expand or renovate their hospital?
Um, Close. So you can think of each hospital as like a business unit. And so the business unit says, you know what, we're at 90% occupancy in our med surge. And so that's when they say we need more med surge. And so then we have obviously our department that helps out, and we will say, okay, well, how many beds do you think you can fill up? And they say 24. And then we actually run the analysis on what that would look like, right, as a payback. So what it would cost, and then what that payback would look like once those rooms are occupied. That becomes a development book, and then our construction guys, actually put a budget to it. And then the business unit, being the facility, has to then get approval from their division and their group. We have lots of hierarchy in corporate America. So once the facility, the division, and the group agree on what that budget looks like and what that business case is, then it goes, literally to the CEO of HCA, who signs off on it. Once they sign off on it, that's when our department hires the architect and engineers. And then depending on the criticality of that project, we might decide to go ahead and sign up our contractors and our subcontractors in an early design involvement. Think of it as almost like a design build to get started quicker, because speed to market is the most important thing in our business. The minute that they approve that money, we are just trying to get heads in beds, right? Because the amount of capitalized interest and all of that stuff that's hanging out there until we actually can see revenue and see patients is a big part of our business.
Interesting. So in the hospital world, the way they measure things is by the number of beds.
Mm-hmm.
That would be the critical factor when they're talking about expanding or moving is number of beds. Interesting. So with that in mind, with quick expansion, needing more space, have you guys seen an uptick in business since the pandemic struck early last year?
So different lines of business. So we've seen a decrease in ER admissions. People don't want to go to the ER. So where typically folks would come in, they're scared to go because they don't want to get coronavirus. We have seen a decrease in elective surgeries. So a lot of our med surge business is fed from our ORs and our surgeries, right, that go to the med surge. So we've seen a slight decline. It's gotten better. We haven't seen any decline in, obviously, women's services, and that's going to be your babies and NICU. That's up, and surgeries are starting to come back. I mean, you can only hold off on surgeries, non-elective surgeries, for so long, but we are hopeful that business will return, when this gets under control. But we have scaled down our business. I don't know if all of our quarterly HCA earnings calls are all public, right? So we've actually scaled down a lot of our operational expenses to meet the demand, and managed to squeak out a decent year for 2020.
Yeah, that's interesting because I imagine that goes state to state. I mean, you're operating Florida, which seems to have been a little less tight on the lockdowns and restrictions. Have you noticed a variance state to state? You said you're mostly managing Florida, so I don't know if they talk about on the earnings call whether it's state to state on those. But have you seen a difference there?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really different per area. So we have Miami, obviously, is was restricted much more than, say, the Panhandle. So we've had to come up with protocol to keep our construction workers safe, to keep them separated from the ED. We even had our construction teams helping to figure out how we turn all of our hospitals into, a COVID, ward, right? Because at the beginning of this, when we were planning on all of our hospitals literally being overrun by COVID patients. That has not been the case, knock on wood. We've had 2 facilities that were at maximum capacity with COVID patients at 2 different instances in the pandemic, which is excellent, right? So we've operationally done a really good job of making sure that we are dispersing those patients, right? And our staff has just been phenomenal in making sure that we have the capacity, right, and being forward thinking about making sure we've got places to send patients when they come in.
Is HCA involved talking with local leaders and government to give them this data? Because just speaking as a layman, I've had to go to some hospitals this year, and they weren't being overrun where I live, but all things that were elective were canceled. So, my daughter, they were going to take out her tonsils and adenoids, canceled for the whole year. I need shoulder work done, canceled for the whole year, because if it's not life-threatening, they're not doing it. And I just thought that was misinformed personally, but I don't know because I don't work somewhere like HCA and I don't work in the government, but I just wasn't seeing it. And so I don't know, is that a conversation that HCA has with local leaders and representatives to give them? Is that where they're getting their data is from you guys, so you can tell them, hey, we're not being overrun. Let's do you give them any kind of advice or anything like that?
So we do communicate with them, and it was without getting too much into politics, it was a bit shocking, right, for our organization when people were shutting down elective surgeries. I mean, that is our business. And so when you shut down elective surgeries, that is greatly impacting our business. We subsequently had to shut down our construction projects, right, which was shocking for us and our partners to literally say, hey, stop what you're doing. We need you to go home. We don't know what this pandemic is going to do. Thank goodness, right, that all of those projects that we stopped or slowed down due to the pandemic are back online and or either have already started back or planning to start back, right? We're in the process of restarting all these projects. It was devastating to business. And thankfully now the majority of our hospitals are in Florida and Texas. And those states really understand the importance of healthcare. So they have had less restrictions on it. But it is hard to hear the media. Even in Nashville, if you watch the news, they constantly are quoting certain private healthcare companies or healthcare entities that are saying that they're at max capacity. We are not at max capacity, so it is hard to hear that on the news and to know that we have plenty of capacity, right, for these COVID patients. So it does feel like a scare tactic, unfortunately, sometimes in the media, which is why I try to avoid it.
What is the typical occupancy rate of an ICU unit? Do you know on a percentage basis what the typical rate is?
You mean for now in the pandemic?
No, I'm sorry, pre-pandemic, because I always look. I've been in hospital. Unfortunately, my brother had some severe issues, and we're constantly going back to the hospital for him. So you just see the ICU units, and they almost always look like they're pretty full, just normally. And so when the pandemic hit, and people are like, "Oh, the ICUs are full," I'm like, "Yeah, they're always full, like 70%, because that's how they make money."
You threw out 70%, so 80% is when we start looking at funding a new project. So when people start getting at 80%, we consider that full. What people don't see when you go into the hospital to visit a patient, you are going into an occupied wing, right? Most likely, whether it's med-surg or ICU or whatever that postpartum, you're seeing an operational wing. What you're not seeing is that there might be other floors or other wings that there's no patients in or staff. And so the idea is that it's expensive, right, to run a hospital. You've got all the staff there, you've got everything. So you try to cluster the patients together. So what's happened a lot of times is that we've had we have many ICU units, right, that don't even have patients in them. And so then you grow once you hit that capacity in that one unit, that 12 bed or 10, 12 bed unit or 20 bed, it depends on, the design of that building. Then they open up another one, right? And then you have to staff up that other wing. So what sometimes patients, or I'm sorry, visitors don't see is they only see what unit they're in, and they don't see the other units that may or may not have patients in them.
That's, thank you for that answer, and I think you put out another critical point. I'll let Joey get his question. Is that these units are like 10 or 12 people, so if you see a really high statistic on fill rate, you're still talking about a handful of people.
So a lot of these, have a couple hundred, ICU beds, right? Some of the larger, and ICU capacity too. That's one of the things that we've learned. I mean, there for a while, we thought that it had to be negative pressure, right? We thought that, there were all these things that we just didn't know when we were trying to understand what had to be done for the coronavirus. I mean, but really it's about having the vent, right? That was the limiting factor, was having the vent. Many of the patients that come in don't need a vent. So we can pull up statistics and know that, let's say at a hospital, there are 27 positive COVID patients there. And then it might only be that 18 of them are on vents. So it's been manageable, is a good way to put it. I mean, we definitely are seeing spikes across the country right now. But we also track metrics. We have metrics upon metrics at HCA, which is wonderful to help us understand how to get ahead of whatever it might be, right? Construction, healthcare, whatever. But we have weighted averages where we can compare what the market is doing to what the facilities are seeing, right, to then flex and understand, like, do we need to start sending more nurses and more staff to that area? Because if you're looking at a 7-day rolling average, we know what's coming up in that market. So we're constantly looking at it from a corporate standpoint, really to understand what's going on in that market. And that was really before coronavirus. We've just now amped up, right, our metrics and tracking.
We talk so much about all the negative impacts that this year has brought to us. Are there any positives to come out of 2020? Have you figured out anything like how to be more efficient, or is there anything you've learned dealing with all this that you can apply to 2021 and beyond?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have to take the positive out of everything. I mean, we in our world in construction, we say we do everything for the patients. And a lot of times we're not really right there seeing the patients. And this really brought, I think, the focus to our construction department. And like, this is truly patient oriented, right? And so everything we do now, we have to think about, how it's coronavirus, patient impact. Obviously, I mean, pulling off the staff, was just pulling off construction staff was probably the hardest thing I've ever done in my career. Having to make those calls and say, hey guys, I'm really sorry, but we need you to put down all your tools and go home. It's devastating. I mean, we sent home basically 80% of our construction teams, just sent home. That means all the subcontractors, everything just literally came to a screeching halt. Thankfully, our partners were really understanding because, like you said earlier, when elective surgeries are no longer allowed, then they understand the business aspect of it. But it was really hard to watch some of our partners have to downsize. I don't know a better way to say it, right? But it was frustrating. I'm happy to report that most of our partners are in a really good shape and are in good shape right now, and started back. I mean, some people had right-sized a few, staff members, but now we're seeing the exact opposite. Many of our partners are hiring right now. So very, very positive moving into 2021. That I think everybody realized what's really important. Get back to basics. Everybody was just running wild, right? Everybody was profitable. We were seeing margins through the roof on some of our projects. And I think it was a good gut check, right? And we knew that the economy was going to have a right size. I just don't think we were ready for it being right size and sitting and hitting so close to our home, which is healthcare.
Let's pause on HCA and all everything you do there. Let's back up to CIM, and because any CIM grad we have on here, we want to plug the program and see what brought people to that program and, where they've been since. So what brought you to CIM? What was your experience there? And what was your first job out of college or your internship? Just kind of take us along that journey there.
Yeah, so I didn't know what I wanted to do when I grew up. I still don't, right? So I was a marketing major because, just go broad. And then Austin Chaney at that time, was doing his little 101, come learn about the program. And, I think everybody needs a specialty, right? I mean, I think that I was going the exact opposite route and saying, I'll go marketing. That way I can do anything. And so then I saw, concrete and the construction. And back then it wasn't cool to be a woman in construction. So that was also nice to just be, something new. Math and science were always a strength. And then once I got in the program, like, Dr. Brown and Sally, and everybody was great. The students were awesome. We got to go to the bar and drink beer after classes, and it just felt like such a great community of people. And we all stay in touch, and not everybody's still in concrete, but it touches some aspect of our lives, like throughout our career. But yeah, I'm thrilled that I stumbled across that 101 class, and I'm didn't go necessarily right into construction. Into concrete, but I did go into an internship with J.E. Dunn. And then that turned into obviously a full-time job. Well, back then it was R.J. Griffin, showing my age a little bit. And I've once again started as a healthcare builder and really haven't done anything since I got out of college.
What was your experience through CIM? I don't know when you graduated, but I graduated 2010. Paul graduated, I think, that same year. Maybe a semester before me. What was your experience throughout the program, and what have you been able to apply what you learned there to your current job?
So I think I graduated college in '07, but I think I finished my last concrete class in '06. It was funny, on a call the other day, we were talking about some hairline cracking in a deck outside a patio, and somebody was talking about something, and they asked for my opinion, and I said, you know what, concrete cracks. It's really what it does. And it was, everybody got a good laugh out of it, but it's true, right? I will say, from the education piece, I don't get into the technicalities of really concrete and the structure and stuff like that, but it's all about the people, right? So we had great staff and great folks and the network. And today, I mean, building is all about the people. So as long as you have a great group of folks that can come together and solve a problem, that's really what this world is built on. So in construction or whatever, if I've got a problem and I'm going to call Paul and be like, what's wrong with my slab? Help me figure this out. That's really what I took out of the program, is just building on that network, the people, and putting your team together. Nobody has to know the issues, right, that you ran into throughout that construction process, right? All people care about is that building is open, you can occupy it, and they don't want to know all the dirty laundry that went into it.
That's a good point. Do you have one specific person that is your go-to that deserves a shout out right now? It's because we shout out Ryan Betts, Argo Cement, all the time. There is a go-to guy for us. Is there a go-to person for you as well?
Not nationally, because we're really dealing in local markets, but I will say, I give Dr. Brown, if I've got any major question, I'm going to go to her, and she's going to filter me to where I need to be. But we really have such a huge network in all of these areas, Florida with all the crazies down there, but there's a lot of really good people also.
Right. Can't forget to mention that.
Yeah, sensing a theme.
Right. Yeah, but what better person to fall back on than Dr. Brown, the ultimate switchboard of networking, right?
That's right.
I unfortunately am not a part of the CIM program. I met Paul and Joey through work. I mean, we work at the same company, but I met them post CIM, and I think the last 3 or 4 people, and probably half of the guests that we've had on the show, they've all been tied into the CIM program in one way, shape, or form. So I'm certainly the redheaded stepchild of the group here. I'm just kind of learning through osmosis.
Well, there's still time.
That's what I was told last episode too. There's still time to go back, get your master's, and do homework again as a 30-year-old.
Well, and in fairness to you, you may not have been a CIM grad, but you did pass the MCA short course level 2 and 3. That's no joke. And you can run concrete lab with the best of them. So don't sell yourself too short.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
I got a couple semesters worth of information in about 72 hours. So.
Yeah, you did.
I joked with somebody the other day that I was a level 3 flat work technician, and it was pretty comical because they looked at me like I was crazy. And I'm like, well, if you need somebody to finish your patio, I am your person. So
that's that weekend side money.
Yeah, there is. According to Jesse Boone, there's a whole bunch of money in that business. So if you get tired of dealing with bureaucracy and business units, you could always pour driveways.
That sounds refreshing. Just to not have to deal with. Sometimes I love the people aspect of my job, but sometimes the people aspect, especially when they're running naked through the job site, is hard to deal with. But I can. It might be more therapeutic, right? Kind of like being a florist, like to just finish concrete. I'm sure you guys have probably heard this throughout the discussions, is that one thing I'm starting to discover is I miss being close to the jobs, right? So it's interesting, like every time you get promoted, you get further and further away from the work and closer to the bureaucracy, right? And corporate America. And so, I miss talking to the finishers and going out into the field and understanding what's going on in the problem. And now it's more, talking to CEOs and stuff like that. And so it needs to be a healthy balance. But yeah, I now it's starting to make me a little sad. Like I do miss being out there in the field and doing that kind of stuff. I can't remember the last time I wore jeans. I mean, it's been 10 years. I got to wear jeans to work. So.
Well, I think there's always going to be a disconnect from, corporate office, field guys. And I'm in a similar situation. I started out in the field and, I worked my way up. And when we see field time now, it's more of an observer than, a worker. I mean, we get dirty, when we're out on job site and whatever else, but it's not the same. And I do miss, running the loader, and I miss batching concrete every now and then, and I miss hanging out with the Hispanic boys out on the job site and talking smack with them, every day. There's just going to be that disconnect, but it's always good to go and, visit the job site. I know you just said it probably tickles you to death if you get to go to the job site anymore because it's exciting. It's different.
We haven't been able to miss it yet. We have what you would call, Jenna, what you would call weak business units here at Active Minerals, and so that means you are exposed to a lot of things. Hierarchies are a little bit frayed, and so we have to do everything on the administrative side as well as the technical and the field side. So you have, sounds like you have strong business units at HCA.
But it's good to be well-rounded, right? They say that you need to be able to change the toner in the copy machine. You need to be able to do everything, right? I always joke, it's kind of not fitting right now, but I always joke when somebody asks, like, when I meet people on the job site, I try to talk to the guys when I'm out there, right? When they're doing the dog and pony show, I'll venture off and go talk to one of the, workers and ask them how it's going, right? And they always laugh when they find out that I have a concrete degree, and they always look at my hands, and usually they're manicured, and I'm like, these hands look like somebody that's doing actual work, and now they look like they've been mangled. So the answer is yes right now, but typically on the job site they would be manicured and somebody would be laughing that I actually have a concrete degree because it doesn't look like it at all.
No, I can't tell you how many times I've been laughed at when I tell somebody I have a concrete. Oh, you're stupid. Well, went to high school in Alabama. I graduated with all my teeth, and I know math, so I was doing all right.
It's a relative term.
talk to people on the job site, that just goes back to, I'm sure we've all heard the saying, treat the janitor the same way you treat the CEO. And that's just being a good person, being a people person. And if you can treat those guys that are out on the job site breaking their backs every day with the same respect that you treat the guy running a multi-million-dollar company, that's just proving you're a good person and you recognize hard work no matter what it looks like.
Well, thank you. I mean, it's interesting when the owner is on the job site and everybody wants to walk you around and tell you all the good stuff, but that's all well and fine. But if you really want to know how something's going, you go ask somebody that's working. And you can tell the culture of the job site, you can tell how, the happiness level, and that's what's really important. And, for the most parts, our projects go really well. But yeah, you always want to go get the actual vibe of the project, and the guys are usually extremely willing to tell you how it's going, what can be done better, and just excited that somebody's asking their opinion. And now, I'm not sure how much you guys get into the tech, like the pull planning system, like the last planner system, but that whole, lean culture, right, of doing scheduling is asking the folks in the field, the specifics. And so that's where we're going. I mean, we've been doing Last Planner for a while now. We're doing it on all of our projects to really, it's not the superintendent dictating it. It's the actual folks that are doing the work, that are coming to the daily huddles and giving their input on the timeframes. And that's how we're really getting better schedule certainty, and not just having that, authoritative, dictator superintendent telling everybody how it's going to be.
Right, for sure. And it makes those people, I guess, a little bit more accountable to the timeline themselves. Since they essentially make the timeline, it makes everybody more accountable and thus more efficient.
I was going to try to make it this entire time without saying accountable, because that's like my phrase. Like, I want everybody to just be accountable for their work. And if they are, everything just runs so much smoother. So I'm glad you brought it up.
It's a very, very team sport mentality. I'm not sure if you played team sport in high school, in college, or anything like that, but if there's one takeaway that I took from playing football, it was, if you do your job and everyone else does theirs, then the score will take care of itself.
Flag football champions at MTSU, so yes.
Jenna, this was a fantastic interview. We certainly appreciate your time. And actually, I had 3 or 4 questions, and they were addressed by Paul and Joey succinctly. So we might actually be getting better at this. I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, thank you guys so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Make me sound smart, okay?
Yeah, no, I'll have an issue with the opposite. As a matter of fact, you come across very intelligent.
Oh Lord, I don't know about that. You're like, so how does Concure work? I'm like, I don't know.
You were throwing around enough acronyms, though. You sounded smart.
Yeah. You had all the business speak. All the business speak was like right on. I was oh man, did she get an MBA? She knows all the words.
I do have a master's. Yeah.
There you go.
Do it.
Yeah. All right. Well, if y'all need any clarification or anything else, let me know.
Okay.
Will do. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thank you, Jenna.
Okay, that's going to do it for today's episode. One final thank you to Jenna. Appreciate you being on the show. And thank you to all you listeners out there listening along with us. Be sure to give us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcasts. And also check us out on social media. Our Facebook and Instagram pages can be found by searching Add 10 Gallons. So go check us out there for up-to-date content and even teasers for our next episodes. Also, big thanks to Acti-Gel 208 as the presenting sponsor of the Add 10 Gallons Concrete Podcast. Check them out at actigel.com, ACTI-GL.com. Be on the lookout for episode 12. It'll very likely be in the new year, maybe the first week of 2021. We'll have that out, and episode 12 will be ready for you then. Until that time, take care. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas.